Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Connection, where industry expert Doug Plucknett interviews global leaders from the maintenance and reliability industry. Each week, new leaders will join us with insights and tips to help you grow in your career, and they'll share a good story or two while they're at it as well. The Leadership Connection is produced by the industry's leading networking and learning community, Mobius Connect. Doug, over to you.
Hello and welcome to the Leadership Connection. Those that have been listening well know that I usually start with good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you might be tuning in. And today's a great example of that because I'm talking with Jason Tranter from Mobius. And I happen to be in New York, and it is about 5:30 in the afternoon, pushing evening, and Jason's over in Australia. So it's very early in the morning for him. I'm guessing anyway. What time is it, Jason?
Well, it's not too bad. It's 7:30 in the morning, so it's not too bad. I'm not complaining, that's for sure.
All right, that's coffee time for me. So how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good.
Today's podcast episode is supported by our friends at AssetWatch. Nikola Labs, the leading condition monitoring and proactive maintenance organization, has officially rebranded to AssetWatch. What makes AssetWatch special is that they not only provide the hardware and software needed to monitor your assets 24/7, but you'll also get a dedicated condition monitoring engineer who will provide you with real-time prescriptive insights on how to prevent downtime. While the company has a new name and a new look, their promise to you remains the same. Check out their new site at assetwatch.com to learn more and to sign up for a risk-free trial today. Thanks to our friends at AssetWatch for supporting today's episode. Now back to your listening.
All right. So Jason is the CEO and founder of Mobius Institute, and I've known him a number of years. We've met through conferences, probably a couple decades ago, the first time. And in this past year, Mobius has been kind enough to sponsor me for a couple of these podcasts that I've been doing for him, and I've really enjoyed doing the Leadership Connection and then connect conversations with Ron Moore. So Jason, I'd like to thank you for your sponsorship with that. It certainly is meaningful, and I know that lots of people have enjoyed listening, and the folks that have actually been on have gotten back to me to say, hey, thank you. It was actually fun to do it. I plan on trying to make it fun for you as well today.
Well, good. And look, our goal is to help people learn and develop and everything, and this is just fantastic. I've been so impressed with the interviews and the discussions with people, and it's a good thing to do.
All right, so I usually try to stick to a format with this, but in this interview, since there are a couple things that I would actually like to talk about, we'll get to those a little bit later. I really want to start with, who is Jason? Tell us about your background, where you went to school, the companies you've worked for, the roles you've worked in, and some of the great things that you've worked on in the past.
Well, I have had probably an unusual career because I've worked for myself for the majority of it. So I started with an electrical and electronic engineering degree in Melbourne. And as part of the graduation process, there were a couple of companies that came to the college and for interviewing, like interviewing for jobs. And I got a job with one of them, Hewlett-Packard. And Hewlett-Packard, way back then, used to make scientific instruments, spectrum analyzers, data acquisition equipment, and all of that. Now that's been split off to a company called Agilent. But so back then, and a long story short, I got a fantastic job as a systems engineer. And the idea of systems engineer was to sort of be the interface between the salespeople and the customer to try and make the instruments work. And it was a great introduction to all of this. It taught me about spectrum analyzers, and I went on and did a lot with vibration analysis. It taught me about data acquisition. But look, I could really tell you a long story. Bottom line is I only actually worked there for 2 years and then started my own company. So I was 23 when I started my first company called Argo, Jason and the Argonauts anyway. And so that was all about vibration analysis, data acquisition, those sorts of things. But so I was involved with the vibration analysis, but also writing software to make vibration analysis much easier. I mean, we're talking a long time ago, before IBM PCs, before portable data collectors, before all of those things. So it was quite a chore to perform vibration analysis. You know, you were recording it on tape, you had to play all the tapes through the analyzer, you had to manually analyze everything in pretty low resolution and all of that. So I thought it'd be great fun to try and write some software that would, well, just aid in that process, make comparison of spectra easier and all those sorts of things. Anyway, so for about 5 years in Australia, the basic idea of the company was to develop these products, still being involved with vibration analysis and so on. But long story short, at the end of that time, we had a number of offers from all the likely, you know, condition monitoring companies, mostly in the United States, and accepted an offer from a company in Seattle. And so we sold, when I say we, my wife and I, we sold the technology, all the software that we developed, sold the technology to the company in Seattle and moved over there. And that was up in a beautiful place called Bainbridge Island, 30-minute ferry ride from Seattle. It was just fantastic. And basically they did a lot of vibration consulting, but we're also developing products. So I worked there for 6 years. That was as long as the visa would allow me to stay in the United States. So worked for 6 years developing products, moved back to Australia and actually kept doing a bit of that as a consultant. And then in 1999, decided to start Mobius Institute. Mostly because it was frustrating working on vibration analysis software and condition monitoring tools and so on, where it always seemed like our clients weren't being given the opportunity to really learn what the machines were telling them, how the machines were failing, how all the data acquisition and instrumentation worked, and all of that. So I thought, well, I'm going to turn my hand to training instead, because I'd written a lot of software and all those other things. I thought, well, I can simulate the machine, simulate the analyzers, and basically create a training company out of it. And so that is, you know, that was over 20 years ago now. And we've been doing that sort of thing, initially in vibration, then balancing and alignment, and then reliability has sort of been the main focus. Well, since the main focus, we're still very much involved with vibration analysis. But anyway, since about 2010, it's mostly been, for me personally, the newer developments have been in the area of reliability.
All right. So those that know me know I've been around this industry probably right around the same time you were coming in, right? 1999 is when I left Kodak and started out on my own and started having to do the conferences and training and doing RCM and helping companies with understanding what reliability was and what they could do. And having been around the vibration stuff while I worked at Kodak, this was one of the more interesting things that I tell people. See, I have no idea how all this stuff works. I know where it's applied, right? And so when I meet folks like yourself that are into this, the detail of it, and that know the ins and out of it, I'm always curious as to, and you said, gee, I got lucky to come out of college and go to HP and get into stuff like this. At what point, though, along the line did you all of a sudden, did the light turn on and say, hey, wow, there's a lot to this and there's a lot that companies can gain? Where did that first come from?
Well, it's a good question. So one day back in 1984, this is when I was working for Hewlett Packard, still in my first year working for Hewlett Packard. Now, I hope this person isn't listening, but so my senior colleagues at the company one day said, you got to go downstairs. There's a fellow there named John Morey. He wants to talk to you about vibration analysis. And they sort of had this grin because they knew that it was going to be an interesting discussion, a challenging discussion. So I go downstairs, I meet this John Morey, who is absolutely brilliant. I mean, what he knows about vibration analysis, it's just amazing. But it meant that it was like diving way into the deep end. But that was probably the moment where I thought, having not known anything about it beforehand, having these long discussions with him and understanding what he was trying to achieve with the measurements, trying to, foresee these problems that were coming, working with customers that obviously didn't want to experience the failures. But in those days, it was a case of taking a vibration analyzer, pressing the plot button, and a plotter actually it was, would draw a spectrum on a piece of paper, and you would hold the piece of papers, from this month and last month against each other to try and figure out what was going on. So it was very difficult to do it, and it just caught my imagination at the time. I thought, wow, this is fascinating. So I started from that point, playing around with software, all on my own time actually, but they lent me a computer, so I went away and did things and worked with people in paper industry and power industry, and it just sort of got started from there. But it really, if they had not sent me down to talk to John Morey, who knows whether I would have ever been involved with vibration analysis at all. But that's really where it started.
And that's the part that, when you get to meet somebody like that can teach you the hands-on piece, right, of how this stuff actually work. My experience with it was, I'm out there working as a tradesperson, and, when it came to compressors and conveyors and things like that, and installing them, this is back in the day when, the guys that carried sledgehammers used a string, and the guys that were precise used a straight edge, right?
Right.
And then the vibration techs come in, and we start doing that, and they're telling us right from the get-go, using a straight edge, that it's misaligned, and you're going, come on, right? So, all right, let's get out reverse dial indicators. If we're talking a nitrogen compressor, and do the coupling that way, and then being able to show us the difference in the readout of, here's what good looks like, here's what you had before, right? And there's a huge difference in that. And when you see something like that as a tradesperson, and that's the piece that I often think is missing with companies when they do this, is to say, take those hands-on people and show them the difference, right? I never learned what all those little lines looked like, right? I always tell people, it's a caterpillar, right? That's what it looks like to me. And then when I got into RCM and started understanding failure modes and how to, eliminate failure modes and understand that aspect of it and tie this piece together, I still look back and go, I probably should have learned the details of that vibration analysis and thermography and all those other tools. Like I said, I know where they apply. And I leave it to the experts to tell me, all right, this is what's good, this is what's bad. So going back and looking over your career, and maybe not even before you got into your career, when were you first recognized as a leader?
Well, so it might seem strange me coming on this leadership connection with what I'm about to say. Leadership for me, if we talk about what I believe leadership really means, there's a lot of positive qualities that a person should have. So I feel uncomfortable saying that I'm a leader because it means I have those positive qualities. But I guess I have always been wired a certain way to, I wanted to take the lead. I didn't, I can be a team player, but I would much rather lead the team than just be in the team, I guess is the best way to put it. So whether I was playing a sport or whether I was, or whatever, I wanted to go out and do it and, do it and fail and do it over or whatever it took. But I was always just happier just taking the lead. So it's just been that way forever, really.
All right, so that kind of leads to the next question, which is one of those that it's down the road a bit. Do you think leadership is a natural skill or is it a learned skill based on your own experience?
Well, so this is something I've given some thought. To me, now I'm an engineer, so I always break things down. To me, there's three parts to being a leader, three sort of levels. So I definitely believe that a person can be educated to be able to have leadership skills, to make sure that you're looking after people in your team, making sure that you take responsibility for what you do, but you give other people opportunities. You protect them if something goes wrong. You listen to them. You give credit to those people. You have to want what's best for the people in your team. You want to give them the opportunity to have ideas, to express their disagreements if that's the case. So I think that those things can be learned. It's slightly harder to then go to the next level, to have good communication skills, to sort of think longer term, to have really good ideas. I mean, it's, just because as a leader you want people to share their ideas, that doesn't always mean they're great ideas. So, there's some skill in that, and the ability to actually make a decision. There's a lot of people who will complain about things. There's a lot of people will say, oh, we should do this and we should do that. But, I think a leader has to be able to say, right, well, okay, that's all great. Now I'm actually going to do something about it. The third level for me is, I think you can learn it, but I think there has to be something within, because you can't necessarily fake being a really good leader. And that is really genuinely believing in those traits of sort of being humble, being more confident and being able to make those decisions, having genuine empathy for people, having respect in other people's ideas and opinions and so on, recognizing your own weaknesses, having integrity is a big thing, being self-motivated, being dependable and loyal, and being tactful and being willing to fail. And, it's all about, I think I've heard other people say this, it's what you do when people aren't looking, but it's really believing it. You can go a long way to acting as a good leader. And that, if everyone acted as a good leader, we'd be in a much better position. It's another level to actually have that as your core spirit, or whatever you want to say. So, that part is probably related to your upbringing. I don't know, but I also think that once you start acting as a leader, you therefore get a lot of positive feedback from doing it. You should enjoy seeing other people flourish. You should enjoy seeing other people get involved in projects or whatever it is. And from that, you realize, hey, this is really good. I don't have to take credit for anything. I will make sure that, people in the team get the credit and I get the blame. And, when you sort of aren't scared of failure, when you aren't scared of taking responsibility, then I think maybe those traits become second nature. Anyway, it's a long answer to a short question, but certainly understanding what the difference is the first step. And if you can then always be able, say to yourself, well, basically, is this what a leader would do? For positive or negative. Would a leader act in that way? How would a leader make this decision? And if you understand what a leader would do, and then you do it, well, then you gain those leadership skills.
Well, I could tell you, I'm sitting here smiling, listening to your answer, because I could tell you that is what floats my boat, is going out and doing the training and then the mentoring, and seeing somebody else take on what you taught them and have success with it, right? And have their careers flourish as a result of that, right? That's one of the, that's what makes me get up and continue to go out and do it. And if I could add one other thing to the qualities that you said, because I remember early on getting into this, a lot of people that I've worked with in the past saying, "Are you crazy? This is never going to work," right? So having the thick skin to be able to say, there's a lot of things that I'm not going to listen to, because I have the confidence to go out and make this work. And when you're confident with the things that you do and the methods that you use, right, you can't help but convey that to other people, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
That is one of the things that I know about you, that you made this transition from strictly the vibration business and going out and applying that and then teaching that and then getting into the whole reliability aspect, the tools, the techniques, the measures, where to apply those things. That type of thing is a big leap in this industry, to go from subject matter expert to saying I'm going to take on more because I want to learn more. Right? When did that transition take place?
Well, it's hard to put an exact time and date on it. As I mentioned earlier, I got into vibration because I was frustrated that a lot of people were attending the courses that were available at the time, and they were largely listening to instructors saying, these are the facts, you must remember those facts. And most people, well, I'm generalizing, of course, but didn't necessarily understand why it was so. They were just told it was so. And I thought, well, it's really hard to be successful in the field of vibration analysis unless you understand. When you understand, you don't have to remember wall charts, you don't have to remember rules and things. You just say, okay, I understand what the machine is likely to do. I understand how the vibration patterns and things will change. But, so I felt good about the training that we delivered in there, all the animations and things that made it more understandable. The challenge then was that I felt like I was setting vibration analysts up for failure, because there they were with this great ability to predict the failure. The trouble is, they were predicting the same failures over and over and over. They were saying, well, I'm detecting unbalance and misalignments and other problems, yet nothing was being done about those problems. They're detecting bearing faults and gear faults and all sorts of things, and no one's really taking notice. Often they were providing recommendations, and someone in the maintenance department would say, oh, send old Joe out and get him to have a listen to the machine, see if this vibration analyst knows what he's talking about. And he'd go out and listen and say, no, it sounds fine to me. And so, all the technology was for nothing. And then they would have a planned outage, and they'd start tearing all this equipment apart. And the vibration analysts are saying, whoa, steady, like you're replacing components that don't need it. And that when you do that, when we start back up, you're going to experience all these problems, right? Infant mortality failure and all that. But so the bottom line was, it was one thing to have this little pocket of excellence in the vibration group, but unless everyone really understood, at the very least, the power of condition monitoring and condition-based maintenance, but unless everyone is pulling together, the plant will never be, well, the plant can be more reliable because you see problems coming, but the equipment will never be more reliable. The equipment's just going to keep failing because you keep doing the same, the same mistakes. So that's where I thought, okay, I wanted to turn my focus from everything that I'd sort of learned to that point. And there are, great people out there who are just willing to share their knowledge. And that's, again, where I've been very lucky, because I've dealt with people in so many countries, coming from so many industries, from climates where it's super hot to super cold, to dealing with dirty mining industries, to, clean pharmaceutical companies, to, you name it. And so I felt like I could bring together what I thought was the true big picture of achieving reliability. And it's beyond the maintenance department. It's certainly beyond the condition monitoring group. It needs to be a new way of thinking. It needs to bring all the different components together, whether it's, planning and scheduling and RCM to set up the plan in the first place, and, all the other pieces. And so that's where I thought, and again, this is just a case, you were talking about confidence before. There's certainly, there's a line between confidence and ignorance, maybe. Anyway, so I thought, okay, I'm pushing forward, and I'm just going to keep asking questions, keep finding where programs are failing, and keep finding those instances where programs have had success. And if I can basically provide warning signs where all the roadblocks are, and share all the success stories. Like, what did people do differently to have success, ranging all the way from the initial sort of business review and the justification of the whole thing, developing the right culture, making sure people behave as leaders, all the way through to all the technical things that need to happen. So again, that was 2008, I don't know, something like that. It was around 2010 when I really formulated the original roadmap to reliability, as I like to call it, with all the pretty diagrams and things. And it's really evolved from there. But, as I say, I've only been able to do it because I have met lots of people over the years who have been willing to share their story. And, if you just keep asking questions and people don't get too sick of you, then, yeah, you can learn from that. And I'm in the very fortunate position of being able to share what I've learned. So that's what's fun for me. And, like, I'm talking too much, I know, but that's really the reward of all of this, when people then come back to you and say either that they've been much more successful as vibration analysts or whatever, but that they're having success on the reliability front, and they feel more confident, they understand what's going on, they're being recognized for their skills and knowledge. So, that's, at the end of the day, what's really rewarding.
Well, I have one other thing that I really would like to kind of close with, and that is, you've talked about that transition. You then went and took it a step further, which is one that, when it came down to who should we talk to in terms of leaders, your name comes up on this list, is you have the certification programs. And one thing that I really, once I saw what you were doing, I went, wow, there is another step. Back 1999, when I leave Kodak and I start doing this, I wanted to make sure that I differentiated myself from other guys that were out there doing RCM. And the way that I did that was to say, okay, I can either come in and I can do RCMs at your company, right, or I can train your people. But if I train your people, it's not going to be, I'm going to come in for a week or 2 weeks, and then they're going to take a test, and I'm going to leave them with a software program, and they're on their own. I wanted to make sure that they could actually use and do what they were taught. So there's a mentoring piece to that, right? And through that mentoring is where the certification came from. So I had people say when they were done, all right, if I got certification, no, you simply pass the test, right? And that's a good step in the right direction, but I want to see that you actually can apply these things, right? And that not only do you apply it, but you get a return on investment for what you did, right? So you go out, you pick an asset, you do a RCM analysis, you implement it, and when you go and do those tasks, it improves the reliability to a point where you get a return on investment for those things. What you're doing now with your certification programs is right along that line to say, look, we're not just going to have you take a test. That's an important piece of this, the learning of it, the being able to speak that language. I want you to go out and use it, right? And I want you to be able to show that you've done something with this, that you've made changes, that you've changed the culture, that you've improved reliability. Could you speak a little bit about that? What motivated you to go in that direction? Because it's something that I think sets what you're doing above anybody else that's out there right now.
Well, thanks for that. Thank you very much. Firstly, I want to make sure people don't feel like I'm trying to sell something. And I also have to be tactful in what I say, because if I say something good about mine, people can take it as a negative against something else that exists out there. There were a few things that motivated us to establish the ARP certification. One was that, and I guess it's part of the ISO, the International Standards Organization, way of handling certification. And that is the idea that at one extreme, if you just take a test, it identifies that you can answer the majority of, the 100 questions correctly. Not all of them, the majority of them. But a person who's going to be effective in condition monitoring, reliability, maintenance, and so on, needs to obviously know a lot more, but you can only test them on certain things, and you can only ask them certain sorts of questions because they're usually multiple choice questions. So the ISO way is to ensure that there's training associated with certification, training that anyone can deliver, but it ensures that people are actually trained. And part of the challenge, and it's getting worse every year, people don't want to invest in training. There has to be some measurable outcome. So by having certification associated with training, it also means that managers are far more likely to educate people, and that education, to me, is really important. So that's part of it. Part of it also, from an ISO point of view, is that you can't just say, well, I'm a bright bunny, I will take the test and pass it, and therefore I'm certified. You have to have verified experience. So part of the biggest hassle in what we do is verifying people's experience. But there's two levels of experience. There's the experience where someone can prove, or whatever word you want to use, that they've had the 3 years of experience or whatever the requirement is. But then there's sort of going a step above that to say, okay, you've been in a role for a certain period of time, but now let's also check, have you been able to implement these practices that we've talked about effectively? Have you performed root cause analysis? Have you changed the culture? Have you done this? Have you done that? So that's the whole picture of ARP. The other thing about ARP too is recognizing that, again, to us, there's just a difference between someone who is aware of all these concepts and technologies and philosophies and so on. There's the person who needs to really, really understand the engineering and the technical side so that they can get involved with RCM and understand planning and scheduling, understand condition monitoring and precision maintenance and all those things. But then there's the sort of the leadership side of being a leader, but being able to implement the program, being able to develop a business case, change the culture. So we also divided it up. But I'm with you 100% that that it needs to be meaningful. Someone should be able to say, well, I'm certified, and it means something. It's not purely a commercial program. It's not purely, I've gathered enough facts that I can pass a test. It's, there needs to be something behind, so people can proudly say, I am certified a certain way. And anyway, so I definitely agree with you on that point.
All right. Well, Jason, thanks for tuning in with us today and being part of this. I've been looking forward to it for quite some time. We've had you on the calendar here for a bit now, and it's good to hear your voice once again. Well, thanks, Doug. I really enjoyed being part of it. I think this series is fantastic. Gives a lot of people an opportunity to learn and see life from a different perspective, and I hope this one's been helpful for people as well. All right, and so to close things out, I always like for people to know, if they had a question for Jason or a comment, what's the best way to get in touch with you? The best way by far is email jason@mobiusinstitute.com. And it's M for Mary, O, B for Barry, I-U-S, because lots of people spell Mobius in very creative ways. And look, I'm on LinkedIn. I just prefer emails anyway. It's just, I see them, I get them, I can respond. But hey, I'm on LinkedIn as well. And if you want to be friends on LinkedIn, go right ahead. That's great too. And when I share things, you'll see them. But yeah, email is a good way. And I get these sorts of emails all the time. I'm really happy to answer, help people with questions they might have or challenges or whatever. It's a fun part of all of this. All right. Well, it's been great talking to you. This has been Doug Plucknett with the Leadership Connection. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Leadership Connection. We will see you back for another episode next week. In between, we hope to see you in the Mobius Connect community where you can meet Doug and share with other industry professionals at mobiusconnect.com. We'll see you there.